He said, according to the sentence that they show thee, you need to follow suit with it. Because again, you went to that place, you went to that person to settle a dispute, not to be right. This is the problem. Everybody want to be right. Everybody want to be right at all costs. And of course, you think you're right when you go there, but you have to be humble enough and wise enough, like this lesson is showing us, to accept some correction. To accept some correction. To accept the fact that you've been deemed wrong in that situation. So that's why he said in verse 10, you went to that place and inquire, and they in verse 9, they're going to show thee the sentence of the judgment. And verse 10 said, and thou shalt do according to the sentence, which they of that place which the Lord shall choose shall show thee, and thou shalt observe to do according to all that they inform thee. You read 11?
I'm in the middle of 11.
Read 11 again from the top.
According to the sentence of the law which they shall teach thee, and according to the judgments which they shall tell thee, thou shalt do. Thou shalt not decline from the sentence which they shall show thee to the right hand, nor to the left. He
said you don't decline. Why does he have to say that? Because everybody want to be right. Your two people disputing, they got a disagreement. Obviously, both of them think they're right. But if you trying to settle it, then let it be settled once it's settled. That'd be the problem in many cases. Don't nobody want to listen to nobody. They don't want to listen. Like the instance I mentioned. People were dragging me. Brother Elijah, they tripping, they doing so-and-so, they doing so-and-so. So I get to the meeting, we have a meeting and listen to everybody. The one that was dragging me, real story. I said, you the problem. You are the problem. And then they go away murmuring, Brother Elijah didn't know what he was talking about. I don't know why he said that. Look, you the one drugged me there. If you wouldn't been so aggressive, you wouldn't have had to get told by Brother Elijah that you was wrong. You the one drugged me there. Other people just came because you drugged me there. You said they doing some wrong stuff. And they came and listened. You the one wrong. But they didn't want to listen. He don't know what he's talking about. Well, you should have realized that at first. But he know people gonna do that. He know they gonna do that. He said, do according to the sentence. Because you counted and put yourself in the hole. Now, even if you still think you're right, you need to follow suit from what the Lord is saying. And maybe you're missing something. Obviously, you couldn't settle it among yourself. He said, don't decline from the sentence, and there wasn't no real sentence in that situation. Just basically stay out of their business. You don't have nothing to do with that. That's a whole house over there. You trying to run it. Stay out of their business. That's all they had to do. But they didn't want to hear that. No, but Elijah, you don't know what he's talking about. So that's what he said. You follow suit. Don't decline from the left hand, from the right hand, or from the left. Verse 12.
And the man that would do presumptuously and would not hearken unto the priest that standeth to minister there before the Lord thy God, or unto the judge, even that man shall die. And
now the thing is, notice, this how serious this is to the Lord, because it's one thing we all can have differences, brothers and sisters, but when we supposed to be serving the Lord and we have means that the Lord gave us to solve the differences and people don't want to go with it, hey, now that's just outright rebellion. You just rebelling now. And he said rebellion is like witchcraft. Stubbornness. He talked about it's like idolatry. So he's telling you. He said, the man that will do presumptuously and would not hearken unto the priest that stands and ministers there before the Lord thy God, or unto the judge, even that man shall die. Didn't even have to be nothing serious. But you didn't want to let peace reign. You didn't want to leave it alone after that. Go ahead.
And thou shalt put away the evil from Israel.
And thou shalt put away the evil from Israel. See, he's talking about killing people. And this is what people say, well, y'all don't kill nobody. No, we don't kill them, but it still means to handle. And this is what this lesson shows you. It still means to handle it. Go ahead, 13.
And all the people shall hear and fear and do no more presumption.
See, and that's going to be put everybody else on notice. See, people think because you say, well, you know, y'all not killing nobody. Hey, the Lord is the one said kill people, and the Lord know what he's talking about. So that's good. It would be good if we could kill somebody, in other words. We just not in position to do that. But actually, the way the Lord got it set up, it must be beneficial for something if the Lord just said right here, that person shall die. And he said, numerous places, kill them. And you got examples of where they literally, the church I'm talking about, literally kill people. So it got to be some validity to it. But no, we can't do it now. But it had its points, good points, obviously, because the Lord said do it. And we know what it is. Because this person died, he told you right here, verse 13, and all the people shall hear and fear. Everybody else going to be like, whoa. So the next person come to get their case heard by Brother Elijah and whoever else there, they're going to be heard what happened to the last case. So they're going to be a little more cautious. They're going to be like, okay, that's what it is. Okay, all right. Because, you see, the last person just got taken out. All the people shall hear and fear and do no more presumptuously. But let's see, even though people can't just be killed at this point, let's see if it's still a remedy, which we already been reading. Let's go to the New Testament, 1 Timothy 5. See, it's still a remedy. And that's why nowadays you tell somebody they wrong, they feel like they've been killed. They feel like you done killed them. Especially you have to rebuke them sharply. Rebuke them in front of people. Unless they humble enough. It's just like some occasions it called for it to be done. We had an occasion, y'all, everybody know Brother Wayne, but Brother Wayne had made a mistake teaching a lesson when we first started trying to groom new teachers. He made a mistake teaching a lesson and show you how humble he was. Brother Wayne, 10, 15 years older than me, but Brother Wayne was a humble brother because he did the lesson. He's really the first real teacher we had to teach once we start getting ready to go out of town. So, but in those days, back in the early 2000s, to get him to teach, we didn't have no other classes yet. That means I would be there when he teach. And so it wasn't his first lesson, but it was down the road. He ended up doing a lesson on the 70 weeks of Daniel. He did a lesson on the 70 weeks of Daniel. And I had never did that lesson. No, I knew it, but since I had been teaching in Gary, I've never did it. So he never saw me do it. And, you know, internet wasn't that popular, even 2001, 2002, because that's when it was. So you had internet, but it wasn't that popular. So he didn't get a good understanding of that. And I should have had a hint because he came to Wednesday night Bible study and asked me some questions about the 70 weeks. He asked me a couple of questions, so I answered them. So then on the Sabbath, we get there, I see the handout, it's the 70 weeks a day. I knew it was going to be a problem. I said, uh-oh. I knew it was going to be a problem. So I'm already thinking, but I'm going to see it out. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have to straighten this out probably. But I'm going to listen. Hey, he might shock me. He might shock me. I really hoped he would. But I got a good idea he not. And he doing the lesson, and the lesson is off the rails. It's off the rails. And I'm thinking to myself how to fix it, you know, say what needs to be said. Because it's not personal at all. It's about the word. Don't have nothing to do with that. And so I'm thinking to myself, and I ain't lying, it's like as clear as day like I heard a voice. Now, I'm going to tell you, I didn't hear no voice. So don't go say, Brother Elijah hearing voices. I didn't hear no voice. But it was like I heard a voice. And the voice told me in my head, you better get up there right now. I was like, huh? Who? I couldn't believe that. I was like, no. So I sat there a couple of more minutes, And then the lesson wasn't getting no better. You know, he had a little handout he had got kind of off the internet. Some Gentiles had. It even had the rapture on there. And he know better than the rapture, but that's what he found, and he was using that, and the timeline was off and everything. If you know anything about the 70 weeks, everything was off. So, and he trying to explain it. So finally, I did it. I got up right there, walked up there, and was like, let me take it, brother. And Brother Wayne, humble brother, though. The average person I'm talking about Brother Wayne, did not miss a beat behind that. He didn't miss class. He didn't get huffy and puffy or nothing. And that's one of the most embarrassing things could happen to somebody. You up in front of people teaching, and somebody sits you down. And I read a couple of scriptures. I read what we're going to read in this, well, we don't have it in this lesson. I read how Jesus even had to call, rebuke Peter. We're going to read it. How he rebuked Peter, you know, and told him when Peter made a mistake and said something, and he said, get behind me, Satan. And that wasn't personal. It was like, you out of pocket in this instance. And Peter didn't get huffy with Jesus and run off to him. Man, you know, he ain't had to call me Satan, man. You know, he could. That's what people always, they got some reason. You could know you wrong, but the other person still did something wrong. So, but I had to take it over from there. And then when I did the lesson, I did a little bit of that week and did it the following week. Told him to throw the handout away and all of that. Then he really understood. He said, man, I wish I'd have had that before. Information before, but that was the issue. And that's just a common mistake. You just did something you wasn't ready to do, but it had to be handled that way because of the magnitude of it. No love lost or nothing. Go ahead, 1 Timothy 5 and one verse 20. 1 Timothy 5 and verse 20. Go ahead.
Them that sin rebuke before all, that others also may fear.
Now you see what the Lord said here? Had Paul to write. He said, them that sin. People not used to this, but this is what the Bible's saying. Rebuke before all, that others may fear. So therefore, you're going to have an occasion to do that. Not every occasion called for it, but you will have an occasion to do that. Because he's telling you that. Some circumstances will call for it. That's why the title is Open Rebuke is better than secret love. It's necessary. It's a necessary ingredient. Them that sin, rebuke before all, that others may fear. Notice we left Deuteronomy 17. He was talking about killing people, but it had the same effect. He said that person shall die, and he said, and all Israel shall hear and do what? Fear. And act no more presumptuously. So it's the same effect. So no, we're not going to kill nobody right now. But he's telling you, you still got to keep some order, and you still have to correct people, and you have to let other people know that there is some correction going on. That's why he purposely said, them that sin, rebuke before all. Now, we already know his steps. That's not every case. That's not every case, because we saw where he said, take it to your neighbor by himself. Don't discover a secret to another, all that stuff. But it will come to this. Them that sin, rebuke before all, that others may fear. Galatians 2. Look at an example of that. See, the Bible is real. It gives you real live instruction, real live examples of that instruction. And then eventually, we read all of these scriptures every Sabbath. We're reading these scriptures. Eventually, we end up having to live these same examples. And that's the good thing. The Lord gave us the ammunition to handle it. He gave it to us already. That's what sometimes be amazed. We be reading stuff, and then it actually come about and have to be dealt with in such a manner. Galatians 2 and 8. Galatians 2 and verse 8. Go ahead and read it.
For he that wrought effectually in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me toward the Gentiles.
See, and this show you something else we're not even dealing with in this lesson, that Paul was really preaching to Gentiles, because a lot of Hebrew brothers, they on this new way teaching that, the word is only for Israel. So that used to be consigned to the Old Testament Hebrews, where they say it's only for Israel. They said back in the day, and some of them still said the New Testament totally wrong, and it's erroneous. But you got these new wave of brothers, they got past the fact that the New Testament is wrong. They saying the New Testament is right, but they still trying to stick with that doctrine saying the word is only for Israel. So what they have done, they come up with this bogus lie and saying that Paul wasn't preaching to other nations, he was preaching to lost Israelites, which literally makes no sense. And they play with the word Gentile. They say, well, Gentile mean Israel in instances. It mean Israel. It's really referring to the 10 tribes. See, it was Judah, and then it was just making it up as they go. So they play with the word Gentile, but I crush them here because he used more than the word Gentile here. He used a word they would never subscribe to Israel. But he used Gentile first right here. What did he say at verse 8? He said, for he that wrought, which means worked, effectually in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision. That's talking about the Israelites, the circumcision. The same was mighty in me toward the Gentiles. That's talking about other nations, not some lost Israelites. It makes no sense. But if we keep reading, we're going to know for sure. Verse 9.
And when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given unto me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hands of fellowship, that we should go unto the heathen, and they unto the circumcision.
Oh, see, he used the word heathen. See, they ain't never thought of that one. So now you're going to say the Bible right here calling Israel some heathen if this not real Gentiles. No, it's real Gentiles. Heathen. You already messing up the word Gentile, so now you got to mess up the word heathen, which always and only can't even be applied to nobody but other nations. Heathen. Like he said, Jeremiah 10. He told Israel, follow not the way of the heathen, the other nations. So you can't get around it. He said, they gave him and Barnabas, he talked about James and Peter and John, they gave him and Barnabas the right hands of fellowship that we should go unto the heathen. And they unto the Israelites. That's what circumcision means. But two different sets of people. Not heathen. It wouldn't even, what makes sense do it make to refer to the lost tribes as heathen? It makes no sense. Never have been so. The law was always okay to seek the lost sheep of Israel. That's what they was doing. That had always been okay. This wasn't nothing new. But go ahead, verse 10. Let's get back to the lesson at hand. Go ahead.
Only they would that we should remember the poor.
Oh, remember the poor, because we going to the heathen and they got more money. These other nations. Go ahead.
The same which I also was forward to do.
11.
But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face, because he was to be blamed.
Oh, when Peter was coming out, now Paul and Peter had a little confrontation. Or Paul actually, what we read here, confronted Peter. He said he withstood him to his face too. See, it does no good to withstand people behind their back and tell everybody else what you think they done wrong. It'll call for you to open rebuke. So we just read, them that sin rebuke before all that others may fear. So Paul is saying he utilized that. See, we act like in the New Testament, it's all smooth, Jesus can. Look, we still people, we still got problems, people still make mistakes. It's just a way to handle it. He said, verse 11, but when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to his face. Why?
Because he was to be blamed.
Oh, because he made a mistake. He was to be blamed. Let's see what happened. Verse 12.
For before that certain came from James. He did eat with the Gentiles.
See, it lets you know they real Gentiles too under this example he's using. So what it's telling you, before all these other Hebrews come, which you can see the same type of thing to this day. Because Israel wasn't used to dealing with other nationalities. So, but they realized the Lord has showed them it's time to open up the gospel and preach to these other people. So they're out there preaching with them, but some of them got that same old mentality. Even Peter had that mentality. So what he's saying is, he said, when these other brothers, before that certain came from James. You know, James was in Jerusalem, calling the shots there. It said, and some brothers came from over there. But before these brothers came, it said, Peter, he did eat with the Gentiles. But what happened?
But when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision.
That lets you know these other people wasn't Israelites, wasn't of the circumcision. Because Peter, hey, he pulled up. He hanging out, cool with the Gentiles, everything cool. Then a bunch of these Hebrews come. Peter like, I don't know them. Who them Gentiles over there? Where they come from? No, you was just eating with them and hanging with them like everything is cool. But now you got a little peer pressure because these other Hebrews, you know, you might get some flack from them. Just like we get some flack from dealing with Gentiles in our congregation. We had Hebrews call us, well, why y'all got heathen there? Y'all, and some of them even called, we had one brother said, y'all got Esau there. You don't know if he's Esau or not. Esau not a Gentile anyway. That's another lesson. Y'all need to deal with that. But we know the word is for everybody. Peter knew it, but he got ashamed when them Hebrews came. So he separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. 13.
And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him.
Uh-huh.
And so much that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation.
See, and the rest of the brothers started doing the same thing. They was all cool with those Gentiles who were called heathen, other nations. And then when these Hebrews came, they act like they didn't know them. They moved over here like, I ain't got nothing to do with them. No, you was just hanging with them, eating with them a minute ago. So a bunch of them did it, even to tell you, Paul said even Barnabas got caught up in this mess. So this is when he checked. But the point is, the moral of the story is, Paul exercised some open rebuke in this case on Peter. Tell him that, hey, that's not right. You being a respecter of persons. Go ahead, 14.
But when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before them all.
He said, I told Peter be in front of all of them. Go ahead.
If thou, being a Jew, livest after the manner of Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews?
Okay, so basically he said, look, if Israel's supposed to know the right way, and we supposed to be showing the Gentiles the right way, he said, if thou being a Jew, livest after the manner of the Gentiles, and not as do the Jews. In other words, if you're going to sit there and be a hypocrite, how you going to be preaching to these people? You trying to show them how to live right, live correct. How you going to be preaching them and you doing the same stuff you trying to correct them on? You doing something wrong. He said, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? If you're going to live like them and be hypocritical, ain't no need of trying to preach to nobody else. So that's what he let them know. But the point is, he had to check them in front of everybody. Go to Mark 8. This is the one I mentioned earlier, Mark the 8th chapter. So not only is the Lord telling us that this same remedy on issues and problems, just correct somebody, it's still good. It haven't changed. We're getting examples of it as well. Mark 8 and 29. Mark 8 and 29. Go ahead, read it.
And he said unto them, but whom say ye that I am? And Peter answered and said unto him, thou art the Christ.
Seems like this mic ain't working either. If it don't be one thing, it's another. Hey, maybe try this. I don't know.
Test. 1, 2.
Eight and 29. Read it again.
And they answered, John the Baptist. And he said unto them, but whom say ye that I am?
So Jesus asking his disciples, who do people say that he is? And they named some people. They said, well, people think you like John the Baptist, come back to life, or one of the prophets. They said a bunch of things before we got down here. So then he turned around and asked the disciples. He said, well, who do you say that I am? And Peter had the right answer. Go ahead.
And Peter answereth and saith unto him, thou art the Christ. And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. And he began to teach them.
So now Peter hit the nail on it. He said, you the Christ. Other place he said, the Son of the living God. We know who you are. And that was the correct answer. He wasn't just another prophet. He wasn't no prophet come back to life. He is the special one, the anointed one, the Christ, the Messiah. He is that one. But he said, look, he charged them that they don't tell nobody that. I read a brother years ago in Memphis that tried to use this to say, because he said, well, Jesus, you know, Christ is wrong. You shouldn't use Christ. I said, well, where'd you get that from? He said, because they said he was the Christ, and he told them, don't tell nobody that. I said, brother, he didn't tell them, don't tell nobody that because it wasn't true. He just told them, don't tell nobody that because he wants them to get it on their own. And you get it clear from the other scripture that say that. He said, you answer correctly, Peter. So that shows you how you could just take something out of context. He said, no, brother, he ain't the Christ. He didn't go by that. He said, don't tell nobody that stuff. I said, brother, you have sorely misunderstood that scripture. And he took that rebuke hard. But go ahead. So he said, you the Christ. And after that, Jesus went on to tell him some things that's going to happen to him as the Christ. How he was going to suffer and go through some terrible things. That's what it said, 31. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders, of the chief priests and scribes, and what?
And be killed, and after 3 days rise again.
And be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And that seems, knowing that he is this special one, if you don't know no better, you might say, well, why is he going to go through all this? Because the scripture foretold that one had to go through this. So Peter made a mistake here. Go ahead.
And he spake that saying openly.
Now, Jesus said that in front of all the disciples openly. And so Peter did what?
And Peter took him and began to rebuke him.
Now, Peter called himself rebuking Jesus. See, the thing is, if you're going to correct somebody, make sure you know what you're doing. So he called himself correcting Jesus and didn't mean nothing bad, wasn't trying to put him down. Really, he's saying, you know, you don't need to suffer that stuff. You're too good for that. But still, he's contradicted. Jesus just said, I'm going to be killed, man. I got to be killed, suffer. And Peter took him and began to rebuke him. Like, why you got to go through all that? That don't make no sense to me. It don't matter what kind of sense it make to you. 33.
But when he had turned about and looked on his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying.
Now, he looked, all the disciples there, all of them. He turned around and looked at the disciples. Peter just said what he said in front of everybody. So sometimes it's necessary to correct in front of everybody. And we get so offended by any type of correction. The average person wouldn't have took this. Go ahead.
Get thee behind me, Satan.
He said, get thee behind. Now, he looked at Peter. He rebuked Peter and said, get thee behind me, Satan, meaning he called Peter Satan. And he really was talking to Satan because he knew that was who was influencing Peter at that moment. Even though it seemed that Peter meant well, saying, Jesus, you don't need to go through all them terrible stuff. Far be that from you to go through that mess. You the man. But still, it wasn't according to the scripture. So Jesus called him Satan. He said, get thee, now this is one of his top disciples. He said, get thee behind me, Satan. Why?
For thou savorest not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men.
See, you got your mind on the wrong place, where he knows Satan did, and that's who Peter was following in that instance. And Peter didn't get mad, man, he called me Satan, man, that's wrong. Why he do that? He didn't disappear or none of that. That's the way people operate now. You tell them they did something wrong, they offended to no end. But didn't happen with Peter. He called him Satan and said, you savor the things that be of men, not of God, but the things that be of men. 34.
And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself.
See, this is lost nowadays. People say, well, Jesus did it all. You don't got to do nothing. Sound like you got to do something if he's telling you to deny yourself. Deny yourself. It's not what you want. It's not even about us as individuals. It's about the whole. That's why he said, deny yourself. Let him deny himself and what?
And take up his cross and follow me.
And take up his cross and follow me. It's going to be tough. It will be a burden. That's why he said, deny yourself. That means even what you thinking. But now let's go further. Go to 2 Samuel 12. 2 Samuel 12. We're going to pick it up at verse 1. 2 Samuel 12 and verse 1. Go ahead, read it.
And the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him and said unto him, there were two men in one city, the one rich and the other poor.
Go ahead.
The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing, save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up.
So now he gave the prophet, the Lord sent the prophet to this king, King David, a man after God's own heart. And we're going to get an example why he was a man after God's own heart, because he was the king. But he was wise enough to take some correction from another man, this prophet. Because sometimes when you make a mistake, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious, but many times, even though it's obvious, people won't listen, especially if you're in authority. So David, being the king, he didn't have to take this counsel and this rebuke from this man. Many kings would have put him out and told him, either killed him or told him, get him out of here talking this mess to me. See? But he started off with a story. But remember at verse 1 it said, and the Lord sent Nathan unto David. And when Nathan got to David, he told him this story about this rich man and this poor man. Rich man got everything. Poor man ain't got nothing but one little lamb, which he brought up and nourished like a child. Go ahead.
And it grew up together with him.
The little lamb. Go ahead.
And with his children. It did eat of his own meat and drank of his own cup and lay in his bosom and was unto him as a daughter.
He said this lamb was like a daughter to this poor man. But what happened? Verse 4.
And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd, to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's lamb and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man.
Go ahead.
And he said to Nathan, as the Lord liveth, the man that have done this thing shall surely die.
Why?
And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity.
Now that shows you David, he gave his assessment of that situation with that man, with what happened in the story. And the story, it said David's anger was kindled. See, and that shows you something. Sometimes, our anger will only get kindled for things that affect us. That's why sometimes people take things, when they taking it personal, when it's about you. When you all been out of shape about something that affect you, but you wouldn't be that bent out of shape if the exact same thing would have happened to somebody next to you, your neighbor, that shows you taking it too personal. See, David was bent out of shape when he thought it was about a whole, didn't have nothing to do with him. Didn't have to do with him. David was upset about it. That shows your judgment will be balanced. Even though this is going to turn back to bite David, but he had the right assessment about a situation that looked like it didn't have nothing to do with him. He was like, what you tell me? What happened? The man, that rich man did that. He said that man need to die. He upset. See, we only get that upset about something that affects us. But that's not the wrong judge. That's why the Lord say every man is first in their own cause. Yeah, you be first in your own cause. But when it come to your neighbor, you be in the background. You wouldn't be out front like that because it's not your cause. That shows you probably should sit down when it comes to your personal cause, because you would have the same assessment like David had. It said verse 5, and David's anger was greatly kindled. His anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, as the Lord liveth, the man that have surely die. He said, that man need to die. Verse 6, he said, and he shall restore the land fourfold, because he did this thing and because he had no pity. But now it's going to come back to bite David, but he had the right assessment. Verse 7.
And Nathan said to David, thou art the man.
Ooh, that was a cold one. Nathan hit that. He came up with a cold way to tell David he was out of pocket. He come to rebuke the king. I guess he said, I better approach this carefully. Told him a nice story. Actually, unbeknown to the king, he got the king on his side already, accepting it. So he said, no, you the man. See, the average person, when it took this shows you this was really a man after God's own heart. He said, you are the man. Go ahead.
Thus saith the Lord God of Israel.
He said, I got a message from you from the Lord. Go ahead.
I anoint thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul, and I gave thee thy master's house, and thy master's wives into thy bosom.
Go ahead.
And gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things.
He said, I gave you all this stuff. But he's checking him for what he did with committing adultery with Bathsheba, with this man's wife. That's what he's doing. He's checking him for that. He committed adultery with her, got her pregnant, and then when he couldn't cover up the pregnancy, like Israel will do that in a minute, they'd cover up the pregnancy. He tried to. When he couldn't do that, he let the man die on the front line of battle on purpose, made sure he died by withdrawing the troops from him. So even though he didn't physically kill the man, the Lord said, you killed the man. So you took the man. Then you took his wife after that. Yeah, he was dead. She wasn't married no more. But the Lord saw all of that, and he wasn't going to let you think that was going to go unaddressed. So that's what Nathan told him. And he told him from the Lord, he said, look, the Lord tell you, I gave you some of everything. That shows you'll never be satisfied. David had plenty wives, but it wasn't enough for him. He was the king over the whole nation. It wasn't enough at that instant. That's why he said at verse 8, he said, I gave thee, the Lord is saying this too, by the way, I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wives into thy bosom. See, that's why I won't speak against more than one wife, even though I know it's not time for us to be worried about that. I can no way say that that's something God made a sin, because I'm saying God sinned. That's what I'll be saying. I don't care who don't like it. It don't matter. God said right here through the mouth of this prophet that God said, I gave thee thy master's house, talking about Saul, and thy master's wives with an S on it. God said he did that. So who am I to say that that's a sin? I'd be scared to do that. Now, I say you don't need to be trying to deal with it now because it ain't time for it, because we out of order now. I know you ain't ready to do it now because brothers can't, so don't let no brother think, well, you see, it's okay, I'm finna do. Look, one man can't stay with one woman nowadays, let alone multiple women. And I see some of these Israelites that be doing this, trying to operate like that. They don't even know what they're doing. I seen, brother, I know personally, how the heck you going to move in with one sister as your wife? You done moved into her house. And then you're going to tell me, I'm going to go get another wife, move into her house. Like, Negro, please. That ain't never been the way it's supposed to be done. That show you something wrong with it. Just like the Mormons, they do that stuff all out of order. They might not do the way some Israelites do, but they marrying two sisters. That's forbidden.